Welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. It is a true honor and privilege to be here to introduce a piece of important legislation, one of the key planks of the House Democrats' platform for 2025. I am State Representative and House Minority Whip Lindsey Burke, and over the interim, I was very pleased to be able to participate in the Housing Task Force, which brought industry leaders from across the Commonwealth to talk about the lack of housing that is plaguing our cities and counties. Kentucky needs over 200,000 units of housing in order to meet our current demand. That number will only rise. And so, with a big problem, we need a big solution. At our House Democrats caucus retreat in November, I approached Representative Joshua Watkins because of his exceptional background in housing development and housing policy. He has the skills and expertise, as well as knowledge and background about many different public policy solutions that will help us address our housing crisis. So, drawing on the task force recommendations and our own experience and recommendations, we have formulated the Kentucky Housing Opportunity Act. This is Representative Watkins' bill, which he's filed, and I am honored to invite him to the podium to tell you more about how we plan to solve Kentucky's housing crisis. Representative Watkins.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Representative Burke. Before I get started, I'd just like to highlight the fact that I am a freshman. I'm a member of the Freshman Fab Five, so that gives me a little grace to be bold yet a little naive. So please bear with me as we do this. But good morning. We gather here today to confront a stark reality. Kentucky is grappling with a significant housing shortage. The Kentucky Housing Task Force reported a deficit of over 200,000 units, and the average cost across the country for a new starter home is soaring. This crisis is not just about a statistic, it reflects the lived experiences of countless Kentuckians struggling to find affordable and decent housing. I know it, we've reported it, and you, the residents of Kentucky, are feeling it. Across our state, hardworking individuals and families are faced with a daunting reality. They are nurses, our teachers, our paraeducators, our seniors, our first responders, our childcare workers, factory workers, hospitality professionals, and young professionals who contribute daily to our communities, yet find the dream of homeownership increasingly out of reach. This shortage isn't just about the numbers, it's about real people. People like a young teacher and a single mother in Western Kentucky, who, despite her essential role in our education system, she finds she struggles to find housing within her budget. This shortage is squeezing our middle and working class families the hardest, pushing that dream of homeownership out of reach for far too many people. This issue isn't new to them. They've been talking about it for years, and we want you to know that we hear you and we are here to help. Representative Burke and I have filed HB 583, otherwise known as the Kentucky Housing Opportunity Act, and it's crafted to meet these challenges head on through a comprehensive and multifaceted approach that includes four major areas. The first, increasing housing supply, because we're committed to closing the housing gap by funding the construction and rehabilitation of homes. This isn't about a temporary fix, but about creating long-term solutions that will serve Kentuckians for generations. Secondly, enhancing infrastructure and development support, because we recognize that high development costs can stifle growth, and this act includes strategic investments to reduce these expenses. By subsidizing the cost of essential infrastructure, we make it more feasible for developers to build affordable housing without compromising on quality. Thirdly, homeless prevention and housing stability. The Act also strengthens programs aimed at preventing homelessness and ensuring housing stability. By providing rental assistance and other supportive services, we help ensure that temporary setbacks do not lead to homelessness. And fourth, expanding affordable housing options with emphasis on inclusivity. The act promotes the development of diverse housing options to cater to the varied needs of our population, from single professionals to growing families and elderly residents. We have billions of dollars sitting in our rainy day fund, generated by the hard work of every single Kentuckian across the Commonwealth. We believe that a $100 million ask to secure their housing future is an ask worth making. This bill is for every Kentuckian who has ever felt the anxiety of an unaffordable rent increase or the despair of a housing search that comes up empty. It's for our young people who are just starting out, our elderly who deserve peace in their retirement, and our families striving to provide stability for their children. It's about building a Kentucky where everyone has a fair shot at a safe and affordable home. Let us consider this profound impact through the story of an elderly retiree couple in my home district of Louisville who own their home, but they're on a fixed income. Rising costs and no cost of living increase on their retirement threaten to tank their household income and cause them to lose the very home that they raised their children in. That doesn't need to happen to them or anyone else mentioned in my remarks. We have the money, so investments now don't need to wait another year. In closing, the Kentucky Housing Opportunity Act is more than just legislation. It's a blueprint for a future where every Kentuckian has access to affordable quality housing. This is about more than homes, it's about hope. It's about communities that flourish when their members from all walks of life have a decent, safe space to call home. A home for every Kentuckian is a future for every family. I invite all of you, stakeholders and citizens alike, to join us in supporting this vital legislation. Our housing issue isn't red or blue, Kentucky, it's about you. Thank you, Representative Burke, for your leadership on this critical issue. And our fellow Kentuckians, thank you for your attention, your dedication, and your belief in the Commonwealth's bright future. I'd like to now call up Tony Curtis from the Metro Housing Coalition to speak on the importance of affordable housing investments. Tony?
Thank you, Representative Watkins, and thank you, Representative Burke, and to the caucus for the invitation to speak today. Housing is critical. I often begin by asking this question: where do you begin your day and where do you end your day? And I hope that's with a roof over your head. As we stand here today, not all Kentuckians can answer that question with such certainty. According to the 2024 Housing Supply Gap Analysis released by the Kentucky Housing Corporation, Kentucky has a housing need of 206,000 units. This includes both rental and home ownership opportunities. And by 2029, this number is projected to grow by 40% to over 287,000 units. The 2024 Louisville Housing Needs Assessment showed that Louisville alone, there is an unmet need of 36,160 units at or below 30% area median income, which is about $26,000 a year for a family of four. We are talking about the lowest of low-income households in our community. Another interesting data point from the 2024 State of Metropolitan Housing Report is that 40% of all renters in the state of Kentucky across the Commonwealth are cost burdened, meaning that households spend more than 30% of their income on rent, mortgage payments, or other housing costs. So what does it take to turn the tide on the housing crisis, and especially on the affordable housing crisis, to create the housing that Kentuckians need today? Three things: land, money, and political will. And we are in luck because House Bill 583 incorporates all three of these key issues. Number one, this bill shows the political will to think big and create a comprehensive approach to creating housing opportunity and housing choice across the Commonwealth for all Kentuckians. Number two, this bill proposes tax incentives, loan pools, and dedicated funds to prevent homelessness and build resilient, diverse, and affordable housing. Number three, This bill would create naturally occurring, geographically dispersed affordable housing on property owned by religious institutions across the entire state. The focus of multiple current bills in the legislature and has some momentum behind it. And this is just a taste of what House Bill 583 can accomplish. We must take decisive action. We must have a full toolbox of policies and a variety of funding mechanisms to confront the growing housing crisis across all 120 counties. I would like to thank the sponsors again, the caucus, for just sponsoring this bill to engage the community and taking the time to have upfront conversations with a community of stakeholders across the Commonwealth, and to think big on this issue. We cannot continue to think small. This is a crisis, it's an emergency, it's a time to invest in this issue. People, when they come to our community, the first thing they do is look for stable housing. There's not enough of it. There's not enough of it that is affordable. And this legislation that is being announced today is a huge step forward to continuing that conversation and ultimately to making change in our community. So thank you for the invitation to speak, and thank you for pushing this key issue forward.
We are so grateful that you've come here today to spread the word about this important legislation that's been filed by Representative Watkins and myself. I'd like to turn it back over to Representative Watkins to answer your questions so that everyone can understand what it is we're offering to the people of Kentucky.
All right, not everybody all at once.
One question for you, and this may be a question for you, Representative Burke. I know during the Democratic caucus, perhaps you guys talked about the homeless bill. Is this the same bill, different bill?
No, that's a great question. So you may have heard the term homnibus, and that name morphed into the Kentucky Housing Opportunity Act because we really wanted to emphasize the importance of housing as an opportunity, and also this moment as an opportunity for us to be bold and decisive to really address a critical issue. And quite frankly, those of us in the political spheres understand words like homnibus and whatnot, but we wanted a name and a title that would connect to everyday Kentuckians.
How far will that initial 100 million go?
It will go really, really far. I think in terms of creating units, I think the numbers are still out between new construction and rehab potentially. It really depends on the adoption, I would probably say, to some of the developers that would see new tax credits and whatnot. But we're talking about hundreds, potentially more than that, of units that are possible to come online and continue to do so. Some of these elements are revolving funds, so they'll be replenished to keep that growth happening.
How would you say this approach to addressing the housing crisis may differ from your colleagues on the other side of the aisle?
I think there are a lot of similarities in our approaches. I think if you were to ask anyone in the House, particularly where we sit, housing is a critical issue in every single county. And so, as Representative Burke mentioned, there are several bills right now that are going through the House, and I'm certain that you all are aware of. For example, we title a bill that's called, I think, Yes in God's Backyard, that speaks about religious institutions developing affordable housing. That's another one. There is a bill also about homestead exemptions, also filed by our Republican counterparts. And so I think this issue is bipartisan. Where we go further, I think, is the historic investment that we're asking to be made on behalf of Kentuckians to really make a dent in what we have now heard from the report, over 200,000 unit shortage in our state.
What is support so far from the other side of the aisle on this bill?
Well, I will say that you will notice several of our colleagues have co-sponsored bills around housing. So there is definitely some bipartisan support on conceptually of what we need. I hope that this bill also receives the same thing. Again, we know that this is not a budget year, and so there may be those that this bill gives heartburn to in relation to its fiscal note. But more importantly, I think what we want to do and why we want to do it is something that's shared across the aisle. So I invite our colleagues to sign on to the bill, come and ask questions about it. Let's get it heard in committee and onto the floor. I think we can definitely do that.
Follow-up question to that, since it's not a budget year, as you mentioned, Can that money be allocated this year, or how would that work essentially?
So I promised myself if I didn't know something, I would defer it. I will give my personal emphatic yes, it should and can be allocated because it's from the rainy day or the budget reserve trust fund. But Representative Burke.
Yes, Representative Watkins is absolutely correct. It is possible to make disbursements out of the rainy day trust fund or the surplus that we have, even though it's not a budget year. I expect we're going to see other disbursements made on behalf of other issues like the floods in eastern Kentucky, for example. There will be several expenditures that the General Assembly makes during this session, and you can stay tuned for what all of those will be.
If the legislature doesn't take action on housing this year, what happens?
I think everyday people are going to continue to find housing their most critical issue. And so I am a freshman legislator, and that gives me the vantage point of not being too far removed from what it's like to be an everyday person. And if you are a renter, for example, and your lease is coming due, and you are staring a rent increase in the face, this is going to impact you. If you are, like I mentioned, a senior who has rising costs and or you want to downsize and you don't have anywhere to go, this is going to impact you. And if you are looking for housing right now to buy, I mean, you all know the real estate market in this state has been bananas. I'm also a licensed realtor. I've had clients and several other folks as well. I've had people searching for housing for years and still can't get so due to competition and whatnot, simply because we don't have enough supply. And I'm asking Kentuckians, if we don't move on this in the summer when you go to buy that house or when you go to move to a different district, I want you to think about a legislature that could but wouldn't. And so I'm asking all of our colleagues to step up to the plate. I know this is something that we all care about, and let's come to the table and do something on behalf of Kentuckians that they can see and feel.